Hi everyone, it is JeGaysus, and we are here for another episode of UNtracing Trauma. I hope everyone's having a good Sunday. We are live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter for the first time. Don't know if it's working. We'll see what's up. I just upgraded my StreamYard, so hey. And then if anyone knows how to get it to Instagram, that would be great. But I'm not that technical, I guess. So I just want to go ahead and give you a quick rundown of what our show is about. So if you're new here, Untracing Trauma is a show where we discuss religious trauma, people's past upbringings, and deconstruction to see how they grew from it, how they decided to let go of the trauma that they may have been carrying in the past. So we'll do an interview with my guest here. I'll introduce in a second. And you can go ahead and chat away. We'll do an actual Q&A at the end of the episode. Before I get into that, some housekeeping things. Please go ahead and like and subscribe wherever you are watching this. If you are listening to the podcast, please also review and stars or whatever they are. And if you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to me, JeGaysus@gmail.com. And our followers. So I do have a join button now for YouTube, and you get a little badge and emojis. I need to make more because I only have 2 emojis right now, but I'm not artistic. So let me go ahead and shout out to all of our Patreon members and my YouTube members. We have the newest member, Joseph W. Hi. Then we have Psychopathic for Stats Minister. We have Bart, Just Cuz, Adele, Katie, Amy, Kat, Arget, Kay, Anna, Crystal, Candy B, Carol J, Claire W, Claire G, Megan F, Gina, Goth Barbie, Fraudy Chick, Heather, Cleet C, Modern Day Masquerade, Jubilee C, Mary M, not Magdalene. And then you two, we have Actually a Dog, Carmen, Mads, Bart, Hazel, and then we also have Amy B, Crystal D, No, Freya, Zaddy, Luthien. And then we have our patron saints. I will extend the patron saint category to Patreon soon. But the patron saints of the channel, Brianna and Bartholomew. Okay, I think I got through all of it. So today, we actually have our first guest who contacted me from watching the show. Usually, I reach out to people via DM on TikTok, but you actually came to me this time. So you're the first. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself, Rae?
I'm Rae McEwen. I about 2 weeks ago started it's a very new social media platform to try to bring awareness to social justice, especially with all of the anti-trans legislation that's going on right now. And it ended up coming to my backyard because I live here in Chico, California, which is a pretty decent sized city. I guess I'm getting in the weeds a little bit here.
No, it's okay. We can get into that in a second.
Yeah, I come from a small town in Southern California. I grew up very, very fundamentalist. I would actually say that my family was like a one-to-one cult situation, like Yanya Lalich describes, which is basically just a cult that's really small.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Let's okay. So now you're here, right? You've made it out. So this is gonna be interesting. So I say generally let's start at the beginning. Like, where did you come from? But you kind of already got into that. So you're from Southern California and you did you grow up in said little tiny cult, or was this something that happened later in childhood?
Both.
Okay.
So, one thing that's really interesting, and I a mental health professional, so I have that like training in psychology and whatnot. So I grew up with a very cluster B family system, which if for anyone that doesn't know what that means, is like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. Luckily, we didn't have any antisocial that I'm aware of running around. But those people tend to be the kind of people who create cults. So
yeah. And that was your parents that had the narcissism and
yes.
okay.
I really feel like I should have written notes or something because it's
No,
very
you're good.
complex.
No worries.
So my grandfather on my mom's side, I feel like has NPD, and so he had like his own little system. And then my mom started creating her own little system.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you say systems,
really...
you mean like belief system?
Yes and no.
Okay.
That's probably my answer to a lot of things. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
Yeah. So they started out believing in like regular churchy things, and then but there was a huge amount of control. Like everything was about control and about appearances.
Narcissism will do that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So like for example, like I remember being like really little, like 4 or 5 years old, and like having to sit through like a birthday party and like all of the adults opening presents and stuff, and it was really boring. And I was like 4 years old. But like I knew that if I moved or spoke, I would be in trouble. And I didn't actually see how strange that was until I was older and I had young cousins that were doing the same thing, and I had seen other kids, and I was just like, whoa, like
they're living a different life.
Yeah.
Okay, so they did start, like you said, in a like mainstream Christianity.
Yeah.
Did you do both at the same time? Like, did you have your private, I want to say lessons, but did you have like your private religious practices and then still go to a mainstream church, like to keep up appearances? How did that work?
Well, I would say what it was kind of like mainstream to the extreme.
Okay.
So
fundamentalist still, but
yeah,
known
so
groups.
like yeah, we went to like a normal church, but then like probably one of the best examples of like what was going on in my family was when I was 10 years old. It was Halloween, and I was like terrified that the Satanists were going to come and kidnap me and kill me. So
Fair.
I went around the whole
house.
Thing.
Yeah. It happens all the time.
Yeah. So I went around the whole house, like checking all of the doors and windows, and like I was like so scared. And like it's kind of like that, like things that were going on in the church, but maybe were not so intense in the church at large, were like extreme in my home, like watching documentaries on Satanism at 10 years old. And like
I do want to get into that. So for the audience to know, you were then homeschooled, right? So you said to me that you're extremely sheltered within what you're allowed to watch and what you're allowed to learn about the world outside. So before we get into, I guess, that part of it, when you were homeschooled, do you have siblings? Like, were you alone, or did you even have like other kids from the same area go? I know there's different kinds of homeschool.
Yeah. So I was homeschooled in 3 different like school umbrellas. So I have experience of like a private Christian homeschool, and then a public charter school, which was actually a good public charter school, and then a terrible public charter school. So and I went to regular school from like 5 to 10, so like until I was
so still super early.
Yeah,
you weren't really learning about the outside world from 5 to 10. Okay.
Yeah, so like after 5th grade, my parents started homeschooling us in 6th grade, and I have one younger brother who I have a good but complicated relationship with. Let's put it like that. And then my mom, and then my dad worked really long hours, so he was gone most of the time. He was home on the weekends.
So was your mom the teacher?
If you want to call it that.
No, I know. That's why I put like
yeah.
So when you were studying, tell us about like what were some of the doctrine or dogma beliefs that you were studying in this cultish form of Christianity? Like what made it different from the mainstream?
Like I had said too, it was very much like everything is bad. You have to constantly be aware that like what you're doing could cause someone to sin. So if you're doing something that falls into like any sort of gray area, like for example, like if you order a virgin alcoholic drink, like that's typically alcoholic, but it doesn't have the alcohol in it, then like you might be causing someone to sin if they see that, because then they're gonna think that it's okay to drink.
Okay.
That's like one example. Like extremely controlled behavior, extremely controlled socialization. Like 6th through 8th grade, I think the only other kids I ever saw were at church or in some church fashion. And then I went to 9th grade at a really good school.
Okay.
And that was a
so
good
you did start to like break away a little bit and be able to learn about the world.
But then in 10th grade, that all went to hell. So
I had hope for you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So I've never been homeschooled, so like it's hard for me to relate. I think as a person who's gone to public school their entire life, it feels like, I mean, we as an adult, we all know like homeschool's pretty messed up for the most part of it. It's usually because people, like you said, are super controlling and want to shelter. There's obviously odd cases out there everywhere where homeschool is a much better alternative. But for the most part, we know now that it's not great. So it's hard for me to relate. But then at the same time, when I talk to people who've been in homeschool, there's always so much trauma. I know the word's like weird, even though it's called UNtracing Trauma. It feels like there's always, I want to say like a resentment. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels like not you specifically, but when you put kids in homeschool, they grow up feeling like they were robbed of social interaction and being able to learn how to communicate and
definitely
things like that. Can you speak about that? Do you have that resentment?
I don't know if I would call it resentment now. I definitely was resentful for a long time. At this point, I'm more just sad that I missed out on that opportunity. And also, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD and most likely autism.
Everyone on this show is. It's great.
So, like, I really needed that social interaction, especially to build skills. And I just, like, as a young adult, I was just totally at a loss. Like, I didn't know how to do anything.
I imagine.
Everything was extremely overwhelming. It was worse in some ways than living through the trauma. I feel like that was traumatic in of itself, of being like, oh, now I have to exist in the world.
Really? Okay.
And this is all I know.
You trying to like navigate then and figure out all these different things that obviously just come easily to the, allistics, like social cues and talking to people and eye contact and all that stuff. So you found navigating that and trying to figure out why you're different was more traumatic than that is the homeschooling trauma itself?
Not so much navigating the autism part, although that was part of it. I just didn't know it then.
Yeah.
For a long time, it actually masked my autism, because I was like, well, I had this crazy abuse of being stuck in a house for 3 years without leaving. Like, that's going to affect anyone's social skills, right?
Right. Yeah, no, that would make sense. It doesn't have to be autism. It's trained. They trained you to be that way. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so, it was more like my two kids both have autism as well, and I kind of saw it with them when things started opening up with the pandemic. They were like, oh my god, like I have to go to the grocery store, even though that was like one of their favorite things before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was probably part of it, and I didn't know what it was. I knew I was different, but I thought I was different because I had been secluded like this.
Right. No, that's all fair.
Yeah.
I guess, okay, so here's something you just said that I didn't know. So you weren't allowed to leave for years? Is that what you just said?
That's maybe a slight overstatement, but just a slight overstatement.
Okay, well, can you talk about that? And then I do want to circle back to all the end times and Satanist, anti-Satanist propaganda.
And all of this happened partly because of that, or mostly because of that.
Okay.
My parents were trying to protect us from the evil.
Yeah.
And okay, so from 10th to like 12th grade, I was pretty much, I don't like to use this word, but it fits because it's true. But I was pretty much a slave in that situation. My mom was disabled, and I was tasked with taking care of her, taking care of the house, taking care of my brother. And not only was I tasked with that, because like kids are expected to do things or need to do things sometimes because of just how things fall out. And I don't necessarily think that that's abusive.
Right.
But like my mom would flip my light on at 5 a.m. and yell at me because there was like one dish in the sink. I was constantly sleep deprived, which is like another thing that cult situations tend to do to people.
Yep.
I would be up till 2 a.m, making my dad's like ridiculous lunches that were expected, and then be woken up at 5 a.m. because there was a dish in the sink.
Like Cinderella, but your actual parents.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. And the only reason that I would use that word of slavery, because like I'm very sensitive to things, obviously, is because I was trapped in that situation, even though it didn't last forever. But I was trapped when I was 15, 16 years old. There was nowhere for me to go. And yeah, it was... Sorry.
No, you're fine. Take your time. So that's part, I can see what you mean then by saying like, oh, I couldn't leave the house for years. It's because you not that you were like locked in the box, but it's because you literally were expected to be servicing and able to be there to service at all times.
And
that makes sense.
There was a little bit more than that too. Like I wasn't really allowed to go outside except to get the mail or to take out the trash.
Oh shit. Okay.
Except for like on the weekends.
But you were kind of locked in then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was some locked inness.
God.
I wasn't really allowed to leave. I was sometimes allowed to go to my best friend's house, who I had met in my 9th grade year that I had gone to the good school. And I was occasionally allowed to go to her house, but like maybe once a month. And then we would get to talk on the phone maybe 10 minutes a day, but it would be like ripped away the second that I did something they didn't, that was bad.
Yeah. So you have definitely like two different things going on. You have the isolation part from the bite model. That's, like you said, a tactic for the cults. You have sleep deprivation, which you said as well, cult tactics 101. And then you also have this carrot and stick system going on, where it sounds like your parents would be like, you can have a friend for this amount of time. And then also we're gonna let you taste what that's like, so we can use it as a punishment to take it away from you. So they're giving you like the hope or like the example of what could be, and it's snatching it away, which is another form of control. So I would start to agree here. This is very culty.
It was very freeing when I started learning about cults and understanding that they could be these smaller systems. And that a lot of abusive families function like a cult, which I also think is really interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. So do you think this was, especially like you said, in 10th grade and after, do you think this was anything to do with your gender? Do you think like it was rougher on you? Because you said you had a little brother.
Yeah.
Did they treat him the same, or were you expected to be the caretaker?
To be fair to my parents, which I do have a really good relationship with now, just to put that out there, but
Okay.
they did try to treat us equally, but then they didn't, if that makes sense. Like, there was that like expectation that because I was female, that like it was my job to take care of the house, but it's not like my brother didn't have chores. It
Okay.
was one of those like sort of gaslighting situations where it's like there's enough that he's expected to do that they can say they treat us equally.
Yeah.
But they don't really. But then my brother has said the same thing, and that can be another thing that NPD people, BPD people can do is make each kid feel like they're the problem or like they're the bad one.
Yeah.
It's called, I think, triangulation.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be just my perception as well. There was definitely that narrative of...
Well, but at the same time, were they waking him up at 5 a.m. to yell at him and making sure that all the food was being prepped by him?
No.
Yeah, so I'd say there's a little bit of gender difference there.
He did. Yeah, there was definitely gender difference, but like it wasn't like he didn't have to do anything.
Well, no. Yeah. That's not what I meant. I was just meaning more like, and I think what I was going to get into about that as well is the locking down and isolation portion. Was that harder on you than it was on your brother? Is it one of those purity culture situations where they didn't want you to step outside because you would be seen and sexualized?
My brother was pretty restricted as well. He was less restricted than me, but I don't think that was because of our sexes. I think it was my brother had made friends when we had went to that first church homeschool, and when he was in like 3rd grade at that time, and he had friends who had moms that were more prominent in the church. So like I think they felt that social pressure to allow him to spend time with those friends.
Yeah. Okay.
Where for me, my friends' parents didn't have that kind of like upstanding status in their mind. So they didn't feel like
they had like a reputation and goal going on when it came to your brother to impress the head women that lunch.
Yeah, basically.
I get it.
And yeah, and like and I guess they considered my brother's friends' parents good people, and my friends' parents were sketchy to them. So like there's also that element.
So there's layers. I don't think I ever got like what year was this in? Is this like let's say when they started locking down? What was
that would have been
the world like?
Late 2000.
Late 2000. Okay.
Yeah.
So before 9/11 or after 9/11?
It was before 9/11.
Interesting. Did it get worse after 9/11?
No, it didn't.
Really?
9/11 didn't have that much of an effect in our house. But my parents...
That's really weird, but interesting.
My parents had ascribed to the whole Y2K thing, and then that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So then, like, I mean, there was like a surge in like patriotic stuff in our house, but it wasn't
but they weren't like all terrified of Muslim people and then putting you on harder lockdown because this is the doomsday prophecy or anything?
The thing is, they had already believed that for a long time, so it was like just further proof for them. It
just more of normal than they're like another box. This is what I told you.
It wasn't like a
first Y2K, now this.
It wasn't like a new thing for them, and they still view the world as extremely dangerous. And I've just like accepted that that's their worldview, and like their background too. They were both really horribly abused by teachers in school because they both have learning disabilities. And so, like, I really feel like a big part of it was like misguided.
Yeah.
And then their own abuse histories.
And isn't that always the case? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people who perpetuate specifically this kind of abuse, it's not, I mean, sometimes it's genetic. Like you said, there's NPD and bipolar issues and borderline happening. So sometimes it's genetic, but also it's just generally because they went through it themselves and they haven't processed that. They haven't sat down and really thought about like, oh, I was abused. They don't realize sometimes that their parents, they might understand that they didn't like their parents. They might understand all that, but they might not actually recognize it as a problem, as an abuse situation. And then that's when it gets passed on to children, is because they're not like I think so many problems in this world would be solved if people sat down and like really just thought about their thoughts. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
introspection, like go in there and figure out, why do I believe what I believe? Was I
totally.
hurt? Was I like, everything should be, so you don't pass it on to the kids. You
Yeah,
know?
and that's something that I always think it's important to mention when it comes to my parents, is that they were genuinely trying to not
Mhm.
pass things on to us, and they did
Mhm.
do better than what was done to them.
Yeah.
Um, and also, like, I was born in 85 and there weren't the parenting resources that we have now. And
That's a good
so,
point. Yeah.
like, they were coming from a protective place, and then I feel like my mom was suffering from depression when it was at the worst, because she was losing more and more of her bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
Like, her body was just, she, which weirdly she's been healed of that now, which is kind of cool. But
What?
yeah, that's a whole other thing that I could go into with somatization of trauma. But
Miraculously? Or oh, but yo, you're saying oh, like, so it was a physical manifestation of her trauma
that's what
that was
I
able to
think.
lift.
I think
Oh.
that was something, because I've been more or less like gently working with her
Yeah.
for like the
Sure.
last 15 years. Um, and as
I mean,
she,
living in fear constantly does
yeah,
a number to your body. Like the cortisol levels, the adrenaline
absolutely.
that's constantly pumping, it destroys your organs.
Yeah, and
Uh,
we know that from the ACEs study too. Like, this is also an area of passion for me.
oh, good. Good,
So,
good, good. You should be able to diagnose and help me then. I mean, I have, like, I'm chronically ill, but we don't know what it is yet. And I think like 80% of that is because I've always had anxiety disorders, like 2 or 3
Mhm.
panic attacks a day, plus my general anxiety, unlike some people where it comes in and out, is constant. Like my heart rate's always at like 125. So like I'm just in this constant perpetual flight mode, and that's what I'm
Oh.
pretty sure is breaking my body down. But that's enough about me. This is a podcast about you. Okay. Um, so you were born in 85. So your parents had children during the height of the satanic panic, which
Absolutely,
I
yes.
imagine could not have helped. Because here they
No.
are already believing the world is dangerous and terrifying. And then they have a 4 and 5-year-old, um, because like when was satanic panic, like 87 to 94 ish was when it was at its prime. So you were little and they were still in their parenting mode of like, I have a little person to take care of, um which is scary for any parent
Mhm.
ever. And then add into that this belief system that they have, and then add into that the satanic panic that the rest of the world is freaking out about, when you're already having these paranoid, I don't want to say fits, but you're already paranoid about that happening, and here it is
Yeah,
happening, and you have a toddler. So I can
yeah.
understand that being traumatic for them as well.
Yeah, and also there, one thing I always think about for with their background too is that they were teenagers during, like, when all the serial killers were starting to be discovered, and it
Mm-hmm.
was just back to back to back to back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, Richard Ramirez happened in the 80s, where he was just walking into people's houses and randomly on
And you were in
11.
SoCal. That's right. Yeah.
And we were in SoCal. Yeah. So like, and then you add that to their background of abuse and then their background of being abused by teachers and school being a very dangerous, horrible place for them.
Yeah.
And then you add satanic panic on top of it. So yeah, like they were very afraid that we would be kidnapped by Satanists. Like that was a real thing in our house as like a possibility. And I was terrified of that.
I was gonna say, how did that rub off onto you? Were you like in
Yeah.
bed every night, like terrified for any creak in the house? Like, was that like, how did that trauma pass into you? Do you know? Did you recognize it?
I was just always on alert. Like I
Yeah.
was always just like somebody's gonna, you know, try to take me. And, you know, I don't know if you've seen those chick tracts from back in the day. I
Yes.
had this one that was like a comic book about this girl who gets kidnapped by Satanists because she's like hitchhiking. I think I was like 12 at this point. My parents were
Okay,
not.
one second. Let me
completely
check something.
insane.
Keep on talking. I can hear you, but I want to
Yeah.
see if I have this chick track that I think I have one. I think it's right here.
Yeah, and it's funny because I actually personally really love like the supernatural, the paranormal. I find that really interesting. So like the way that played out with my like baby Christian self was like this obsession with Satanism and occult stuff. So I was super into that tract. I was like, oh my gosh, like they're worshiping
Okay, I'm back.
Satan.
I found it. I don't know why I knew exactly where that was. So she was kidnapped by Satanists, huh?
Yes. I remember they had like a van and it was like two 70s looking dudes. Or no, there was a girl with them. But yeah, like there was just this, and like if you add that to purity culture too, that like Satanists want to sacrifice virgins. So like then it's like you have this dichotomy of like, if I'm a virgin, I'm going to be more likely to be sacrificed by Satanists. But if I'm not a virgin, then I'm not a good person.
Right.
When I lost my virginity, literally one of the first thoughts I had was like, at least I can't be sacrificed by Satanists anymore.
I don't even understand like the dichotomy of that. Like I imagine them sitting up at night thinking of ways to try to make you be less virginal without actually having you have sex. You know what I mean? I imagine like parents talking and be like, what are we going to do? We need to figure out a way so that like maybe we start a rumor and just spread it around the houses saying that she is not a virgin anymore. Then I'll get to the Satanists and we'll be protected. Like I imagine that. I don't know if it happened, but it would be funny.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, so I want to show everyone. This is a chick track right here, and so for the audience who doesn't know, these little tracks were really popular in like the 80s and 90s. They're not so much as popular now, so it's interesting that I got handed one. I was at a convention last year and got handed this at a like deconstruction convention, and I was like, they do that still? Like protesters hand out chick tracks? And I have no idea what this one's about. It's called The Execution. It's not like as terrifying, I guess. There's some guy in jail and he was supposed to be hung for a crime and then something happens, blah, 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 go here, go there. And then Jesus. So that's the story. It's a little less traumatizing than being kidnapped from Satanists, but they have some gory ones too, like heads getting chopped off, and I don't know why they thought that was a good idea.
That reminds me of like the Thief in the Night movies.
Yes, with the guillotines.
Yeah, I was say like if anyone doesn't know, it's like this series that they made in the 70s, and there were like 4 movies, and it was about like the tribulation. And I remember like literally thinking that I needed to be prepared to die for my Christianity because like it could happen at any moment. And then Columbine happened.
Yep.
And the she said yes thing happened. Yep. And so it was like
millennials got like the downpouring of be ready to say yes.
Yeah.
They will come for you and they will hate you for loving God.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And what's sort of funny is they taught us to be like, you know, warriors and like stand up for what you believe in and whatever. And now there's so many of us on the deconstruction side doing what we're doing right now and like standing up for what we believe in, you know?
Yeah, and little did they know that they're coming after the odd HD people here who like autism, I guess, you know, there's been a lot of talk about how the DSM-5 now added a strong sense of justice to the autism
Yes.
symptoms. So here you are with all these people who have a very strong sense of justice, and you're training us to go out and cheat up.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, and like when you're told from the age of like 5 or 6 that you're gonna have to like, you know, fight for your life against people who are out to kill you.
And
like,
then there's literally people out to kill you for being queer.
Then you're just like, you're kind of like, yeah, when you're faced with that, it's like same shit, different day. I'm sorry for your cussing. I don't know if that's okay. But...
No, it's okay. I cuss sometimes on here too, but it's fine. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to get to like how you started deconstructing before we run out of time here. So awful, isolated, drained, sleep deprived. What was your first moment of being like, this isn't for me, and not just like your house situation, but where did you separate from the belief, I guess?
Okay, so I will try to make this concise.
It's hard because there's no like one thing for anybody,
yeah,
you know, but if you could like give like a general time period and like why you started thinking about it and we're like,
well, I left home at 19 with no money and no place to go. Okay. And thankfully, well, I shouldn't say no place to go, but no plan. That's a better way to put it. My aunt and uncle took me in, and that was good. Even though there was some control in that situation, it was still better than the situation I was in.
Yeah.
And then I got married.
At 19?
At 21.
21.
I met my husband in January of 2006 and married him in September.
Okay.
That is one of the best decisions I have ever made in my life.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was worried. I was like, here we go.
Yeah. He has always just been super supportive. And then once I was married as a female, the family backed off a lot.
Oh, well, because your husband's in control of you now.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. But then he wasn't like that.
But he wasn't like that. Yeah.
So, yeah. So like I was faced with like, okay, I've done the thing, you know, that women are supposed to do and get married, but like, now what? Like, what else do I do with my life, you know?
Yeah.
So then I went to, at this point from like 19 to 21, I had kind of fallen away from the church, and then I came back to the church.
Okay. The church in general, or like the specific church you grew up with?
The church in general.
Okay.
Because I didn't really like, there were a lot of things that I would say I was undecided on because I couldn't square them in my mind. But then probably one of the biggest things that happened was I started watching RuPaul's Drag Race in like 2015. Yeah. I don't remember how I came across it, but I just loved it so much. And then like hearing, and I've always been a creative person. I'm very creative. It's just how I live my life.
Sure.
And so the creativity that was like just on display, I absolutely loved. But then I had this like voice in the back of my head because I was still going to like a very conservative church at the time. I should say very. It was probably about my mainstream.
Yeah.
And when they actually showed queer people talking about like these horrible experiences that they had gone through, it really shook my standing that I'd had for a long time, which my standing as an adult had been that it doesn't matter if someone is queer. God loves us all anyway.
Yeah.
but like I wouldn't go when I was younger, I wouldn't have gone so far to say that it was like fine with God, but that like we should approach it with from a place of love. So it was like still homophobia, but homophobic light.
Yeah, as so many people out there, I'm sure, can relate to.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not watching my show, I don't think, but hopefully one day they will watch this show. And it's not recognized, I don't think, a lot as homophobia, but like you said, it is homophobia light, and it comes from like a good place. It comes from a place of cognitive dissonance, really, because here you are, and you've grown up this entire time thinking that like gay people are evil. And so you have to meet it in the middle. It's part of the process of being like, they're not evil. They're like, I love them.
Yeah.
I don't want to hate them, but I understand that God doesn't like it. So like you come to this place of acceptance where you're like, I accept them. I understand that it's a sin, but like everything's a sin. So
yeah,
I get that.
Place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was one thing that was like a big change for me is like when I was 21, somewhere in there, I made the decision that I didn't want to be destructively angry anymore.
Ooh, that's a good word. Destructively angry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's funny because I've just recently discovered my constructive anger, which is kind of amazing. And that's where WickedGrumpyQueer was born from. Is like me reconnecting with anger and like, but I'm also glad that I stopped destructing on people because like I was super angry as a young adult, like crazy angry. And that was one thing too with my husband is because he also is a trauma survivor of a different brand. And like he shut down if I would yell. And like I loved him so much that like it made me like, okay, I can express myself in a way that's not gonna like make him feel like this.
Yeah. I'm glad you recognize that.
Good practice, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so back to like the drag queens. Like seeing their stories, I was like, there's no way this is a choice. Like nobody would choose to go through this.
Right.
Like that's ridiculous to even think that. So that happened, and I was still going to church, and then and that was like a whole process of like a year or something of thinking about it. And then we were in church one day and they were talking about forgiveness, and they were like, you know, if you have a rift with someone, you need to go home and call them and tell them you forgive them, with like no caveat for
no room for boundaries. No
recognition of mental health. And like personally, I'm a big proponent of forgiveness, but not and even reconciliation, but like with boundaries and with like protecting yourself first.
With work and recognizing your own limits, not just giving into that person again. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. like with my own parents, they have met me as far as they can, I would say. Yeah. And I respect that and respond to that. Because they could have, I mean, there was a point where I was like, I don't know if I want you in my life anymore. Like, it's just too hard.
Understandable.
Yeah. But they rose to the occasion. They stopped verbally abusing me. It took practice. It took time. Like, it wasn't like instant. It was like a lot of them getting angry and screaming at me and me being like, I love you, and hanging up the phone. And that being the end of the conversation.
I love that.
Yeah. But like,
I mean, like, not, you know, like, I'm not like, yeah,
I love them,
but like, I love that you were able to set boundaries and kind of train them, if you will, and train them into respecting your boundaries. I love that you're able to balance that instead of cutting them out entirely. But I'm also glad that they responded eventually to that, because if they didn't, you have every right to cut them off.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's always the caveat is like, if someone's not even trying, you don't need to continue giving and giving and giving.
Right. I'm all for no contact, but like you said, I'm also a big proponent of forgiveness and like setting out rules.
Yeah.
Like I've never gone no contact with anybody in my life except for one person, and like you said, it was trying and trying and trying and trying, and then at some point, too many fails is just you're wasting your time.
Yeah, because you can't control the other person.
You can't control the other person.
Yeah.
Everyone, you need to remember.
Yeah.
They exist in their own mind. Everyone has their own universe in your head. For bad or worse, or good or bad. What I was gonna say is, how did you come to like this, like really grown up approach to dealing with your parents? How did you come to like letting yourself feel that you were traumatized? Was there like a way? Did you start going to therapy and somebody pointed it out? Was it working with your husband during conversations that you came to these realizations?
It was, let's see. So I started really like understanding, like for a long time I thought it was my fault and that I was just like a bad daughter.
Sure.
So I went from this place of like I hate you to like, oh, I guess it's me, to then I found the definition of NPD online in like 06 with dial up and everything. And it started helping me just understand what was going on. And then that was just this continuous sort of journey through understanding psychology and different patterns. And then understanding that it is trauma, understanding like all of and abuse, like all of these things, like they just came slowly.
So your healing came through like research, basically. Like you're able to start piecing together different bits of information. That's great. Okay.
And I have, at this point, I've had 4 years of therapy, like actual therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Although, as a mental health professional, I would say that like research is therapy in its own way. It's a type of therapy.
I didn't know you're a mental health professional. What do you do?
I work with foster youth that have been adopted and their families.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. That's brand new. Cool. Brand new going into that. But yeah, I'm very excited about
Spreading the love. I approve. I like.
Yes. Yeah, I fought hard to learn my own emotional regulation abilities, and so like I have such a heart for like the kids that nobody wants to deal with.
Yeah.
Like because they need it. They need that, you know, important, that adult help the most.
Yeah. So, from a place that like, yeah, you probably understand a lot of what they're going through, even if you weren't a foster kid. But like you said, the emotional regulation and the being unwanted or feel like you were being used. You can relate and pass on like the skill sets that you've learned by introspection. Like I said earlier, everyone introspect and research like Rae.
And a good therapist. And if you don't if you don't feel comfortable with your therapist too, after like 3 months, you need a new one.
Yeah. Well, I say I haven't even been in therapy since I was like a kid. I need to get in therapy, but that's a different topic for a different day. Okay, so we're at a point where I guess we will start wrapping up, but I want to do Q&A time if you don't mind hanging out for another like 10 minutes, Rae. No, anyone who has questions. Okay, good. Anyone who has questions, I'm gonna kind of scroll through the chat to see if there were any during the episode, but also enter them in the chat now, and we'll kind of throw them on screen and talk about them. In the meantime, let's show this one. Hi, Aggie. I'm probably mispronouncing that, I'm sorry, but we have a fellow. Ooh, Mennonite curriculum, even though she was Methodist. Let me read it for the people who aren't on YouTube. Sorry. Aggie says, really looking forward to this. I was homeschooled from kindergarten until I started college at 16. My mom chose to use a Mennonite curriculum, even though she was a Methodist. ? I always felt so alone. Well, I'm so sorry. But I only brought that up because I'm like, you know, there's people out there. There's people who probably need to hear this story from another person who's gone through homeschool. And
for myself too, yeah, like that isolation piece. Like I still, like when people, one thing that's nice is now I'm in my late 30s. Like, people don't ask me about high school so much.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Silver Tongue as well says, wow, I seriously relate to the speaker. I was expected to take care of my grandma for years who was slowly suffering from dementia.
That's
I'm
so hard.
sorry. That is really hard. I hate that like life does that to us, you know? Like I watched my mom go through that with my grandma, and it was just like so draining on a person. So I feel sorry for life. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's see here. No papers. Does Rae have any trust issues? From Ryan. Do you have any trust issues with information now? Like vets, everything to the extreme. Like make sure everything is really true when you see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is one reason why I have a degree in psychology, partly because of my love of research and science and analysis. That was always a direction that my brain went anyway. And
Yeah.
and as a kid, I was really a problem because I would always ask questions that like nobody could.
Don't we always? No, it's funny. And Ryan says, same, Rae, same. Because like I never even would have thought about that. But yeah, here you are being homeschooled, told this is this, this is this. Don't ask questions. And so now to compensate for that, you love research because you're like diving in and organizing things to be like, okay, we can approach this in an actual scientific way and look at what's happening here.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
in a way, your trauma became your skill, and that's what got you a degree in psychology. There's positives from trauma sometimes.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm working on I plan on using that to help people. So.
Yes, and that's great.
Whenever we can use our trauma, I think that's such a healing and amazing thing.
Absolutely.
To help others.
That's what I feel like I'm trying to make here in terms of like not necessarily sharing my story all the time, but you know, using the fact that I have all these lovely people and friends that I get to hear from when their stories, and wanting to give that platform so that other people don't feel alone, because I feel like that's the most dangerous thing in deconstruction, in atheism, in coming out as queer, in just anything that's counterculture. The scariest and worst and most dangerous thing is feeling like nobody understands, because leads to depression, leads to anger, you know. Yeah. So I hope to help that. Okay, let's go. Actually, we do have some questions here. Here we go.
Okay.
From Mads. Hi. What would you say in advice to someone who's trying to take their first step outside of their cult community without any kind of support?
From my own experience and from what I've seen, you just have to take the leap and hope that you'll land somewhere soft. Because when you don't have support, you're not going to have people on the outside that are going to be able to tell you like, oh, we'll help you. You kind of have to take the leap first and then find the people that will help you, which is really hard and really scary. But having done that myself, when I finally got to a breaking point with my family, you'll be surprised who will show up to catch you. And there are people out there who want to help, and I feel like I can't think of the name of it, but there is a website that's devoted to helping people who have recently come out of cult situations aftermath. Yes.
Is the very
Yes.
next comment.
Yeah. But yeah, take the leap, and then you'll find those people. They're out there. They want to help you.
Yeah. So for the listeners on the audio version, so the Aftermath Foundation, Sparkling Dragon says it's for helping people escape these types of situations and cults, and they help anyone they can to leave the destructive environments through networking, placing them with jobs, things like that. The Aftermath Foundation is really good. And then on the therapy side of it, recovering from religion is good. They have hotlines where you can call and talk and work through your negative self-talk around destructive religion. Recovering from religion. So I would definitely have those two resources and have them in your brain to give to people when you do see them in a situation. No bitches. I have a question kind of related to homeschooling, but not exactly. Okay, what's the question?
Yes.
Let us know the question. Is the question no bitches? Question? Oh, yes. Love that Sparkling Dragon. Oh, not that one. But that's true too. But we are not alone in our trauma. By sharing, we help heal ourselves. Yes. And others. Yes.
Absolutely.
That's it right there. Gotta share the realizations as they come. And that's why I love, I wish, I know it would have been a lot harder. Social media would have had a lot more pressure on me as a kid, but I wish I had social media in high school. We had MySpace, but MySpace was like just talking to the same people you talk to in school every day. It's nothing new. But I wish we had a wider social media like TikTok where I could have actually recognized, oh, this is abusive, or I'm treating myself like crap when I don't have to be. There's more bullying on social media, sure, but I would have learned a lot about being proud and being
I think there's
sure
a
of
lot
myself.
to be said for the exposure to different viewpoints that social media has brought. That's a double-edged sword for sure, because it has led to more extremism in some area for some people, but it's also led people like us to be able to connect.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's good sides and bad sides, but yeah, I definitely agree.
So yeah, this isn't a question, but this is the one that no bitches want to talk about. So it's heavy. It's a trigger warning. When I was 13, I was SA'd, and I didn't understand it at the time. For a year after, I wasn't allowed to leave my house and talk to my friends for a long time.
I can't even imagine how painful that must have been for you. I'm so sorry.
It's terrible. That's terrible. I hate Duolingo with a gun. I would need more context, but all that I know is that's just awful. I don't understand why your parents kept you in for a year. Maybe it was a protection thing because they didn't want you to be hurt again. I'm not sure what's happening, but either way, it doesn't matter because you shouldn't have been assaulted in the first place. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That's not okay. Oh, wait. There's more. Here we go. And that party led to me having very low self-esteem, and I'm very anxious, can't talk to people, and I'm insecure in my relationships, even the platonic ones. How do I deal with that?
Well, that is a big question, and I wish that someone could have given me some direction like I'm going to try to give you. And please know that this is just from my experience, and you might need to tweak this to make it fit your situation. But the way that you deal with that is just by taking the next step right in front of you. Just try to focus on you're gonna have the anxiety anyway, so you might as well do the thing.
That's true. No, that's good advice.
I for years would tell myself that 90% of doing something is or of succeeding is just showing up. And if you take that mindset to dealing with these kind of horrible things of like showing up for yourself in whatever way that you can. I feel like this is more of a pat answer than I wanted to give.
What do you mean
dealing
pat
with it,
answer?
Yeah, dealing with it is really friggin' hard. And that is valid. It really sucks.
Yes, it is.
The best thing that you can do is try to find people that you can trust. Because like for me, my relationship with my husband, who has always been super supportive, and like when I realized that I was bisexual and like he understood that, he was like, oh, okay. Like it wasn't a thing. And like finding even just like one person that you feel comfortable with can start to give you that like attachment springboard where you can start moving out into the world more, and also give
just like Sparkly Dragon said, you're not alone. Remember that. You can find somebody to talk to. It doesn't have to be in your real life. Even you can reach out to me. I'm really bad at getting back on my Instagram DMs, but if you ever need to, go ahead and send me an email. I also was assaulted, so I've been through the process of, accepting that it wasn't my fault, and I've seen what that looks like. But reaching out for sure.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. That was it.
I also want to say, bitches, like you're super brave to like speak up in this forum if you're struggling with social anxiety, and I want to give you lots of love and a big hug for that, because for years, if I was in a situation, like any kind of social situation, I didn't say anything for years. There was a time that I almost passed out in a speech class when I was 18.
Oh, no.
Because my panic levels were so high. So like,
oh, no.
Like you can get better, but it takes a lot of time, and unfortunately that's the road that you were given. But there are good things out there. They just aren't always easy to see from where you're sitting.
Exactly. It's hard to see when you're at the bottom of like whatever mental situation is going on.
Yeah.
I wanted to show one more. So Silver Tongue, me and my twin were assaulted as well by a pastor's kid and then taught to forgive him. I'm sorry. Again, any abuse case, I'm just so sorry. But like,
me too.
The fact that you're taught to forgive him, as we were talking about earlier, like, is forgiveness a good thing? Yeah, it can be, but that should be your choice. That needs to be your process of learning to feel safe and comfortable. And yeah, you shouldn't. I hate that they teach you like, oh, you have to forgive him. As a godly person, he messed up, but you need to forgive him because he's still a brother in Christ, and that's what Christ would want. That's
and also forgiveness without accountability is not. It doesn't fix the situation. It's not. It puts all of the emphasis on the victim.
Exactly.
All
of the work has to be the victim getting over it. It has to be the victim being the better person. It has to be. It's so backward. It's so backward.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing in my situation with my parents too, is like they have taken responsibility for a lot of the abuse. Not all of it, because not all of it is something that they can see, and that's fine. But they've taken responsibility and been like, I'm sorry that happened, and I would do it differently now. And accountability is really important. Like forgiveness has its place, but people have to take accountability for their actions.
Absolutely.
And if they don't, you don't owe them shit.
Bam! That's a good way to close it. I think we'll end right there. You don't owe them shit. So, let us know what's going on right now. Do you have anything coming up that you want people to know about? What are the best ways to find you on social? And
okay, so I'm on, let's see, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube under WickedGrumpyQueer. So if you just put that in, you can find me. I am working at the moment. We have like a major like MAGA cell, I guess you could call it, in our local area that is
Mhm.
trying to really push for against everything good and right in the world. And so that's kind of like a lot of the focus of my stuff, but it's also about like the wider issues, especially affecting queer people and trans people.
Yeah.
Um,
So more on
and
like the
just
political activism side.
yeah, and it originated just because I was like, you know what, I have this set of social media skills that I've cultivated in different ways, and like why, like I want to use that to help people, and I'm already like bugging the other side, which is kind of great. So like I'm still really small, but like they watch my videos, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Uh,
yeah, like I'm trying to bring like awareness. Just we're in a really dark, crazy, awful time. So I wanted to
this is
like
true.
start fighting back with like the skills and knowledge that I have in some way.
Yeah.
And so like I try to make really shareable short content, like from school board meetings or from just sometimes I'll just share, I like to share other creator stuff, especially on Facebook, to try to give more of a face to the LGBTQ plus community, especially um by just kind of compiling it in one place. That's essentially what I'm doing right now. And then making what's going on in my own area more accessible to people. And
Right.
also like I really want to energize the youth vote in my area so that we can get these people out
I love
of
it.
power. So yeah,
Yes.
that's
I
my
think that's so important because most people like on the political stage are so focused on Congress and Senate and just like um the national politics, but like the
uh-huh.
fact that you're there focused on your area and local politics is so needed because that's where these weird like library shutdowns are coming
Yes.
from. Like that's the stuff that matters. um
Yeah, and that's one of the things too, is that a lot of people on the other side have specifically said that they want to go after school boards because that's where
yeah.
kids are learning stuff. And
Yeah.
like thankfully I'm in California, so like we have things like comprehensive sex ed as just like a standard, like that's just what is taught.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, like recently there was a big deal about trying to revoke trans kids' rights to privacy and not being outed to their parents.
Yeah, I remember.
So, and that, yeah, because and that case ended up making national news because there's a parent suing the school district because their
Good.
kid socially transitioned and they didn't tell her. And I was just like,
Oh wait, no, bad. You're saying
yeah,
okay, she's suing the school district because the school district didn't tell her
yeah,
that their child was trans. Okay, gross.
yeah, yeah. And so, like,
Ugh.
it was, and that's sort of the thing is I noticed in my specific community that, like, the conservative whatever side, I don't really like calling them conservative because they're like their whole other brand of something else.
Yeah, there's something else.
Um, they they have more of a social media presence. And so I was like,
Yeah,
well, that's something that I can do is lift
fight
up
back.
these amazing speakers who are coming to these meetings
Yes, yes.
and not getting featured on social media.
Highlights the other side. I love that.
Yeah.
Give
So
fair, not fair, but give more equal balance for
and
time to
yeah,
speak and
I
share
don't
ideas.
I don't pretend to be equal or balanced like
No, 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 no. But I mean, like, if they're being shared and highlighted, you need to be sharing and highlighting the other side, and we need people to do that. So I
yes.
love that, and I respect
Yeah.
that.
So yeah,
Um,
that's my
I
goal. I am trying so hard not to dehumanize them, but like
yeah, I
it's
get it,
hard,
but
bro. Some days you're just
they're
like,
cult
oh.
members too. Um, I was gonna say I really need to follow up and do probably like a video on that case about schools outing children as trans because I find that interesting. Just because personally in my story, how I didn't come out to my parents. I was outed to my parents by my school, by my high school. And I'm also in California. And so the comments I got, like I talk about that in my coming out video, where I'm doing my makeup and stuff.
Mhm.
But the comments I always get are like, that's so illegal. They can't do that. And I'm like, either it wasn't illegal back in 2004, or I lived in a small town that didn't give a fuck, and I probably could have sued them. But like, it's interesting now that it's it's like we're going backwards. It's like we're just repeating the same thing. Like in 2004, they were outing kids to their parents from school.
Yes.
And then we still were fighting on Prop 8, you know, and there was still no legally recognized marriage. And then we get these things done. And we're right back to 2004 again. It's like we're just repeating things Groundhog Day style. It's awful.
That's one reason why because I originally started my channel focusing on like trans rights specifically, because I was just like, this is horrible. Yeah. But like when you open up, they just pick whoever they think they can bully the most.
Thank you. I say that all the time. Yeah. I need to make a video about that as well. Thank you. They will continuously pass the blame until it becomes socially unacceptable to do so. That's always been the Republican Party. Always has been, always will be. It started with, you know, Black people and Black rights. Couldn't do that anymore. So they moved on to Chinese immigration. Couldn't do that anymore. So then they're like, well, the gays. And then that kept them going for a very long time. You know, the gays. And then all of a sudden it became socially acceptable and marriage was legalized. They're like, well, we can't do that anymore. So now they're going after trans people. Whoever. Oh, and in between there was, of course, you know, like Southern immigration and Mexican fear. Yeah. But they will find a group and focus
some Muslim phobia in there.
Yep, the Islamophobia, that was good. Shorter amount of period that the government was using that, but that's the Republican ticket. They don't present ideas, they only undo ideas, and what they do present is just a fear of a group until they realize, oh, we can't use this anymore, and then they have to pick another group.
Yes, totally.
Exhausting.
Totally. Exhausting. And that, yeah, I had a professor that had said that, like, if you start with local politics, it ripples out. So that's been really inspiring to me. And like, I really want to like light that fire in anyone that I can. Like, if you're really mad about what's going on in the country, start with your local school board. Start with your school council. Yes.
I refuse because I hate school boards, but I do want to run for a position maybe next year. We'll see how that goes. I'm terrified because I'm like, I don't know how to do anything like legislatively. Like if I were to run for city board or something, I'm like, I don't have any of those skills. But then it's like you look around at even national Congress and neither do those people. They're not lawyers and they're writing laws and stuff. So like, I need to learn how to just be like, I can do this because I want to do it. I've never been good at that. I've always been like, oh, I don't know. Like my friend is like, I'm going to make a music video and become a singer. And I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I don't know about that. I need to just be like, if they can do it, apparently I can do it. So
that's an interesting connection to like our religious trauma is like being told that you are not in charge of yourself and that like you have to be ordained by God to have a voice to speak. That is interesting.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, JeGaysus is gonna be on the ticket for local politics. Everyone move to my area and vote for me.
Yeah, I know.
We'll see what it is. I don't even know. I would like to be in state Congress. I feel like the city board would drive me freaking nuts, but we'll see. I'll think it through.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Silver Tongue, for saying the live was fantastic. I appreciate you. And I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I don't know. Oh, I was going to say, y'all know where to find me. JeGaysus everywhere, except that's not true because TikTok keeps taking my name away. So if you want to find me on TikTok, my name is now JeGaysus, H Christ. Got it. Because I love the blasphemy and the blasphemy loves you. I've also been kind of behind putting these up on the podcast platforms, like all of them. So I apologize for that, but I will have them I'm getting better. I promise. I'll put them out as much as possible. And I guess that's all we really have to catch up on. I will be doing a like Patreon / YouTube membership live soon. So if you're watching this now, would be a good time to sign up if you're interested. I'm going to start doing like a couple of free ones, I guess you can say, with the discipleship group. And then there's supposed to also be like another thing. You'll see when you go there to sign up, like what the tiers are and what kind of perks you get. But I'm going to get better at that. We're also today, I think, releasing another almost short, which is like our 3-minute videos that TikTok allows me to put up, but I can't put them up on YouTube in shorts. It has to be like it's a full video. So we're going to do one of those. And we're also going to do a new compilation this week. And I'm going to put up a poll for that. I think that's going to be a members and Patreon poll as well, to do what do we talk about next? What do we talk about? What do you guys want to know? But you can always just comment and at me and all that fun stuff. So I hope to see you guys next week. We will have a author on talking about his book. I won't give more details than that because I want to do an official announcement video, but I was reached out by his publisher and he has a lot to say in addition to promoting his book. So that'll be fun. My first author. We have a lot of firsts back to back. First fan reaching out to be on the show. First author using the show for promotion. It's going to be good. Okay. I love you all. Gay men, and take care of each other. Be kind to each other and have a good rest of your day. Bye.